if you get hold of two magnets and you push them, you can feel this pushing between them. Turn it around the other way and they slam together. Now, what is it, the feeling between those two magnets?
What do you mean, what's the feeling between the two magnets?
There's something there, isn't there? I mean, the sensation is that there's something there when you push these two magnets together.
Listen to my question. What is the meaning when you say that there's a feeling? Of course you feel it. Now, what do you want to know?
What I want to know is what's going on between these two bits of metal.
Magnets repel each other.
And, well, then what does that mean, or why are they doing that, or how are they doing it?
You're asking...
I must say, I think that's a perfectly reasonable question.
Of course it's a reason. It's an excellent question. Okay? But the problem that you're asking, you see, when you ask why something happens, how does a person answer why something happens? For example, Aunt Minnie is in a hospital. Why? Because she went out and she slipped on the ice and broke her hip. That satisfies people. It satisfies, but it wouldn't satisfy someone who came from another planet, knew nothing about things. First, you understand why, when you break your hip, do you go to the hospital? How do you get to the hospital when the hip was broken? Well, because her husband, seeing that she had the hip was broken, called the hospital up and sent somebody to get her. All that is understood by people. Now, when you explain a why, you have to be in some framework that you allow something to be true. Otherwise, you're perpetually asking why. Why did the husband call up the hospital? Because husband is interested in his wife's welfare. And so you begin to get a very interesting understanding of the world and all its complications. In order to if you try to follow anything up, you go deeper and deeper in various directions. For example, you could go, why did she slip on the ice? Well, ice is slippery. Everybody knows that, no problem. But you ask, why is ice slippery? That's kind of curious. Ice is extremely slippery. It's very interesting. You say, how does it work? You could either say, I'm satisfied that you've answered me, ice is slippery, that explains it. Or you could go on and say, why is ice slippery? And then you're involved with something, because there aren't many things as slippery as ice. It's very hard to get. Greasy stuff, but that's sort of wet and slimy. But a solid that's so slippery, because it is in the case of ice that when you stand on it, they say, momentarily the pressure melts the ice a little bit, so you got a sort of instantaneous water surface on which you're slipping. Why on ice and not on other things? Because ice expands water expands when it freezes, so the pressure tries to undo the expansion and melts it. It's capable of melting it. But other substances contract when they're freezing, and when you push them, they're just satisfied to be solid. Why does water expand when it freezes and other substances don't expand when they freeze? All right? I'm not answering your question, but I'm telling you how difficult a why question is. You have to know what it is that you're permitted to understand and allow to be understood and known, and what it is you're not. You'll notice in this example that the more I ask why, it gets interesting after all. That's my idea, that the deeper a thing is, the more interesting it is. And we could even go further and say, why did she fall down when she slipped? That has to do with gravity. It involves in all the planets and everything else. Never mind. It goes on and on. Now, when you ask, for example, why two magnets repel, there are many different levels. It depends on whether you're a student of physics or an ordinary person who doesn't know anything or not. If you're somebody who doesn't know anything at all about it, all I can say is that there's a magnetic force that makes them repel, and that you're feeling that force. And you say, but that's very strange, because I don't feel kind of force like that in other circumstances. When you turn them the other way, they attract. There's a very analogous force, electrical force, which is the same kind of a question. And you say, that's also very weird. But you're not at all disturbed by the fact that when you put your hand on the chair, it pushes you back. But we found out by looking at it that that's the same force, as a matter of fact, the electrical force, not magnetic exactly in that case, but it's the same electrical repulsions that are involved in keeping your finger away from the chair, because everything's made out of its electrical forces in minor and microscopic details. There's other forces involved, but this is connected to electrical forces. It turns out that the magnetic and the electric force with which I wish to explain these things, this repulsion in the first place, is what ultimately is the deeper thing that we have to start, that we can start with, to explain many other things that looked like they were, everybody would just accept them. You know, you can't put your hand through the chair. That's taken for granted. But that you can't put your hand through the chair when looked at more closely, why? That involves these same repulsive forces that appear in magnets. The situation you then have to explain is why in magnets it goes over a bigger distance than in ordinarily. And there it has to do with the fact that in iron, all the electrons are spinning in the same direction. They all get lined up, and they magnify the effect of the force until it's large enough at a distance that you can feel it.
Oh yes, atoms and electrons. You should call it the basis of life. What people call atoms is the basis of life, because every little thing in this world and beyond, throughout the universe, exists because of the existence of atoms. And within the atoms, inside, as electrons, or what you know as electrons. I have different names. But atoms are not solids. What makes the appearance of solidity, it's the speed of the electrons. For example, this wall looks like it's solid cement. It's not. It's not. This is not solid at all. You can walk through this wall. This chair, not solid. You can walk through this chair. This plastic keyboard, it's not solid. You can put your hand through it. There's nothing solid anywhere. Anywhere. Not on this planet, not in this galaxy, not in all of the universe and the expanding universe. There's nothing solid. There's the appearance of being solid, but there's nothing solid. Only the speed of the electrons inside the atom looks like things are solid, and you believe it. And that's the major problem, believing. Because your brain can be your best friend or your worst enemy. You are born, raised, believing that a wall, this wall, is solid. You cannot go through it. It's solid. It's not solid. This wall or this keyboard are made of atoms with electrons inside. Just the same way you are. You are made. That's how the goddess did it. Your body is made of the same structure. Primitive, simple structure than anything else in the world and beyond. So, you can go through a wall, you can do anything you want. You can even fly. But I'll talk about that in a second. To go through a wall, it's easy. Once you believe you can. And I've seen people doing it. People have nothing to do with Caristus or aliens. They believe hard enough. But not everybody is equipped with that kind of mental state that they believe they can walk through a wall. Of course, it's hard. You've been hit by rocks, by things. You can do it. You can go through a door. But to certain people that are wired in a certain way since they were born, by accident or on purpose, they believe enough that they can do it. And they do it. There's plenty of examples if you do your research. or people that walk through walls, do anything. But you gotta believe. To believe that you can walk through a wall, a cement wall, it's not easy. It requires a lot of faith and also knowledge, but more faith than knowledge. Now, you know, when I turned 13, I was approached by Mikhail and the course. I've told that story a few times throughout the last decade, and even recently I showed where I met with them and all that. The first thing information I received was Mikhail introducing himself, but he was not there talking for half an hour. He talked for a few seconds, and the information I received from him was like receiving the information you have like in 10,000 computers all at the same time. So there's no questioning, is this true? Is he who he says he is? No, you know it's true. There's no doubting, there's no if or nothing. You know. So the introduction that Mikhail had with me, the same thing he had with Daniel and Gabriel, because 4 brothers, for a while, a long while, only 3 Cassius brothers living among humans as humans. We all go through this at the when we turn 13. Mikhail used to, but then he chose to stop a while ago. I showed it on the video. He chose to not be part of these 4 brothers. So now it's like 3 brothers plus 1 Mikhail. He left this of living as a human amongst humans. And so when he gives us this information, it doesn't take half an hour. It dumps the information in our brain. It's like, oh, so we immediately know everything. That happened to me at 13 years of age. The next thing was the course talking with me inside the car. There was one, the shapeshifter, so he was dressed pretty much like a businessman. Do you know what the first thing he said to me in that car? He actually didn't say anything. He told me. He said, put your hand through this chair, the chair's in the car, because we were in the back seat. That your hand through that chair. I'm just a 13-year-old kid, suddenly bombarded with all this information from Mikhail, and now there's this guy dressed like a businessman, a course. I put your hand through this chair, through this seat, the car seat. I couldn't understand that. How can I do it? It's a car seat. I cannot put my hand through it unless I grab a knife, cut it. What? I was looking. I don't understand. It's like, put your hand through this seat. And I still, for I don't know, 5-10 seconds of looking at him, I can't. It's a seat. And he again looked at me very serious. Like, put your hand through the seat. Fine. So I went like this, and my hand went through the seat, like so. So the seat, now it was here. There's my arm here, the seat, and the rest of my arm on the other side. I took my hand out. For a 13-year-old kid, it was pretty freaky, but because I already had all the information in my brain that Mikhail dumped in me, I wasn't like going to run away or running away or freaking out. Like, it's just I'm learning a lot, and this is freaky, but okay. I never felt threatened or anything. For the contrary, love and acceptance or anything, never in danger. So like strange, but in a way normal also. Like I was supposed to be there learning these things. And then they explained to me the guy. First he explained by words, then he did something else. See this? Yeah, I have a bunch of them now. Started by 1, 2, 3, 4, now I have a bunch of them. This is what you receive. Because, we, the 3 brothers, plus Mikhail, but it has nothing to do with that. We get all these things. We have many. Did you see the video of Daniel Putin? That's why he wears his watch on this wrist, not on this one, because it bugs him.
Владимир Владимирович, сколько времени сейчас?
Сейчас без 20, полночь.
А у вас нет
Без
на руках?
20-12.
На руках часов нету?
Есть.
А на какой руке?
На правой.
На правой? Вы левша?
Нет, я не левша, но просто я люблю часы носить на руке так близко к запястью. И заводная головка, она, если на левой руке носить часы, она задевает кисть.
That's why he wears his watch on this wrist, not on this one, because it bugs him.
Но говорят, сейчас модно в Кремле носить на правой руке.
Первый раз слышу, не знаю.
Мы прочитали сегодня в газете.
Не знаю. Может быть, не знаю.
Скажите, а что буквально?
Вы хотели, чтобы я посмотрел на часы? Я так и понял.
That's why he wears his watch on this wrist, not on this one, because it bugs him. Me, it doesn't bug me, but in this case, it bugs him if he wears the wristwatch over the implants. Me, it doesn't. But on that day, I got a few. Then over these, I got many more. This allows me to do many things, but that's for another video. Anyway, so he told me, this Kurz guy in human shit, telling me, you're no different from physically, not spiritually, of course. It has nothing to do with your soul. He said, physically, you're no different from this chair, the seat on the car. Like, I thought, we are no different physically on this table, this wall or this chair. No different. We are composed of atoms. Trillions of atoms in one body. Many more trillions of so-called electrons inside each atom. Meaning, this is no different. Our mind is what's stopping us. Our minds is what's stopping us from believing that this is any different from us physically. So, spend, a couple of minutes explaining to me how I could walk through a wall, put my hand through plastic or whatever it may be, a rock even. And he said, this has to be taught to you. We could give you this gift right now. And when you go to your house, instead of opening the door, you could walk right through the door. But you have to learn, not just do it. Otherwise, that's like cheating on an exam, You already know the answer. So you might have, grade A, be the best in the classroom, but you don't know. You're the best student in the classroom, you have the best score, but in fact, you don't know why you're the best. So you have to learn, not only to get the result. So that went through a process in the next, after that day, Talk about, I don't know, 5, 6 years of learning, understanding. But the main thing is the mind. It's to believe that this physically is no different from this. This is not solid, and this is not solid. Our minds see it as solid, but it's not. There's nothing solid anywhere. And they also taught me how to control the speed of electrons inside the atom, not only the speed, but the way they move, the direction. You can actually control, for example, you have a metal wall or a metal door. And in metal, like the other guy was saying, and he was right, electrons inside the metal atom, they'll go the same direction. If you break that direction and you make 50% of them go this way and the other 50% that way, you walk right through. It breaks the image and the composite of solidifying, sorry for my English, solidity of an object. So if you learn and believe that you can look at a piece of metal, which you know it's just a bunch of atoms with a bunch of electrons inside each atom, and if you can stop their direction, divide them in two, and make some go clockwise and others counterclockwise, and then you just walk in. But it's not easy to do it, but learning how to do it is easy. Believing is much harder. That's why in some videos a while ago, I have said it for years, that if you really believe, you can stop the sun from rising in the morning. Oh yes, you can. Because planets are not above the mind. Nothing is above the mind. The mind controls everything. The hard part is believing. I told you an example a while ago, quite a while ago, but I'll repeat it again. When my son was around 3 years old, one day he stopped talking. Yeah, by the way, by the time he was 3, he could, talk and say a few things, and one day he just couldn't speak. He couldn't speak. One day, I woke him up, and he couldn't speak. He wanted to say, "Hello, Dad. Hello, Dad," and it came out like this. Hello. He couldn't speak. I'm like, what the hell? Nobody ever explained to me, Mikhail, or other people in the course, nobody ever explained to me why my son one day was speaking normally and the next day couldn't say a word. He could say, but it would take a long time to finish a simple sentence. My first instinct was to take him to some experts, because the cause is not, of course, the first thing was I approached the cause, tried to approach Mikhail, trying to understand what's going on with my son. No answer. No answer. There's a point for that. I felt very insulted, but okay, nobody answers me, so I already knew everything about believing, but not about this. So I took him to a couple of specialists, speech specialists and others, and nobody had an answer. So after, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 weeks, one night I sat by his bed. At the time I was living in a place called Taber, Taber, in the province of Alberta, Canada. I was serving the coast there in Taber. I was only there for a few months for a specific mission. And I sat right beside on his bed, and I told him, because I believe. And I said, Luna, tomorrow morning when you wake up, you will speak normally, just like before. I spoke with him for a while, a few minutes. And I said, do you believe me? Tomorrow morning you wake up. You go to sleep, you wake up. Tomorrow morning you wake up, you talk normally. I went on and on and on. Next day I went there. I woke him up. He was speaking normally. So, the power of the mind, believing. Believing is more important than seeing or even understanding. It's believing, it's faith. Now another example. I know a lot of people. Some have emailed me, others, people that I know. And a lot of people, not only people I know, that you know, or maybe yourself, you thought, like, I wish I could fly. Maybe you were younger as a kid and you saw some Superman movies or cartoons. And, I wish I could fly. Well, you can. You can. And you don't need wings to do it, like the Carishus and other races. Carishus are not the only race with wings. You don't need wings to fly. You can do it all by yourself. Because once again, nothing is impossible. If you believe, truly believe, faith, you can fly. I'm not saying flying like a fighter jet. I've never seen a human or other races who do not have wings to fly very high or very fast. No. Carishus can do it because they have wings. If they have wings, they can go wherever they want. And there are other races with wings, not only Carishus. If you have wings, you can go just like a bird. But if you don't have wings, then you have to fly a different way. The mind. And the mind can lift you up quite a bit. You will not have the capacity to fly as fast as Carishus, as high as Carishus. You can fly. And the more you believe, the higher you can fly and the faster you can fly. I'm going to give an example. This is very rare. Because who is going to believe, number one, that they can walk through a cement wall, let alone fly? But it's possible. And the first time I saw it on a human was, I think, 1992. I was working for the cause, serving a mission on an island called Madeira, Portuguese islands off the coast of Africa. That's where the football star Cristiano Ronaldo was born. I knew his father very well, by the way. And I met him a few times. That's another story. Doesn't matter. I mean, talk Cristiano Ronaldo. But I knew his father very well. Cristiano Ronaldo was a child. I had no idea he was going to be a superstar football star. But I knew him from there. But his father, I knew him well. And I was working on that island. And one day, I had this thing to do, I had to go to this house and talk with the owners. I'm not going to disclose what I had to talk with them, but I had to go there. Anyway, I went there. It was a Friday or Saturday afternoon, and it was a Friday. And I knock on the door. Tick, tick, tick. Nobody answers. Knock a few more times. Nobody answered. Okay. And I think, okay, I guess nobody's here. So I'll come back tomorrow. But before I left, I just had to check the doorknob, if it's open or not. And it was open. The door was open. So now I'm in front of this corridor. I didn't walk into the house. I just opened the door. It was open. And there was this long corridor, maybe 20, 30 feet long, 15 meters long, with rooms on both sides, bedrooms, kitchen, washroom, whatever. It was a long corridor in front of me. And so, hello, I was saying, hello, someone home? And I saw this woman at the end of the corridor, about 2 feet or 3, just going from one side of the corridor, from inside the room, crossing the corridor to another room, floating. Anybody would like scream and shout, witch, the devil. But I knew better. That's not a witch. That's not the devil. And eventually, a few days later, I got to know the family. The mother, she was the one floating. The father, he had no idea. Just, what's going on? The daughter, and the brother-in-law, and this and this. I got to know the family, and I became good friends with them. And but I always wanted to talk with the mother, because she was the one floating. The rest of the family didn't know anything about it. They're just normal people, One was a driver, the other one doing this, and they had no idea. The mother was very much into other kind of stuff. She didn't even know the kind of stuff she was into. She didn't know if she was into the devil or the angels or Christ, or she didn't know. She was just in the process of learning about anything she could get her hands on. And she came across some information, which, by information I mean books. And she believed what was written on those books so much, with so much faith, that she eventually, after, according to her, years, she finally got to a point that she believed she could fly. That's not flying, it's floating. It's not flying, it's floating. But she did. She could rise up the ground, the floor, and float. Not for very long, and not very high, and not everywhere. She had to be, quiet, in a quiet place or whatever. She felt comfortable, almost coming into a trance, but she could. She was not the first or the last one. She was the first, but not the last one I saw doing it, floating. It's not flying, it's floating, but nevertheless, just enough belief, knowledge, and belief. But belief is more important. If you believe you can float, you can, but it's not easy. Anyway, so anything's possible. You are what your mind determines to be, not what the world around or other people tell you who you are, what you're supposed to be. None of this exists the way you see it or perceive it. It's all in here. Now you're asking, maybe, can I walk through walls? Of course I can. Not all the time. Not all the time. Because I serve as a human amongst humans, and I have my moments of weakness. Sometimes believing is not enough. Faith also. I've walked through walls many times, but some days I'm mad, very mad at Mikhail or something, and so my faith is a piece of shit. And then I cannot go through anything. Only when my faith and belief is pure, and it doesn't happen every day, then yes. And I know the moment. I know the moment because the emotion, what you're feeling is so strong, you can do whatever you want. You can go through walls, you can float. But I don't experience that every day, no. Because of my life and what I do, serving the cause, staying faithful, spiritual, it's very hard. You want an example? Just a couple of weeks ago, I was on a mission. We're going after this group of Vlashai, but it's about 50 kilometers from here. And we were there, we arrived there like at 2 in the morning. And we had our binoculars, we're checking out. I was planning on raiding their house about 5 a.m. They have a barbecue going on. This was like 2 in the morning. They had a barbecue going on because it was a typical small type metal barbecue. And we got closer and closer, and as close as we could get to the house to have a good view of what they were doing. I wanted to know how many people were there. Usually it was 4 or 5, but yeah, maybe that night they had friends. We wanted to know, or if they have guns with them or not, but we wanted to know. Yeah. The closer we got, the most horrible it became. I start hearing these screams that are worse than a human being tortured. And I've seen thousands of humans being tortured in the most horrible ways. And the screams that I was hearing, and this was a house like in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, the screams I was listening was worse than a human being tortured anything. Finally, we realized that they were barbecuing a dog while it was still alive. Those screams were much worse than any human I've ever heard. So, when I go through those situations, when I see a dog being barbecued alive, and I hear the screams of the dog, or a cat, I've seen many horrible things, or babies, human babies. But for some reason, these dogs, when they're being barbecued alive, the screams are worse than any human, any cat, or even a human baby. Because human babies, if you burn them alive, like I've seen situations, the body goes into shock and they die fast. Go through a lot of pain, but they die fast. Dogs last a long time. When I see and feel those things, my faith is kind of lost for a while. And if you lose your faith, then you cannot walk through a wall because you have so much hate in you and so many things going through your mind that you will not walk through anything. You'll get a bruise on your head. But after a while, that too will pass, those memories, or at least kind of lose a little bit of the impact they had on that day after some days or some weeks. And then you regain your faith and your belief. But yeah. So, believe me, anything's possible. Stick around. I'll teach you a lot more. If you want. It's none of my business. Have a nice weekend.
But it's a force which is present all the time and very common and is in a basic force of almost, I mean, I can go a little further back if I were more technical, But at an early level, I just have to tell you that's going to be one of the things you'll just have to take as an element in the world, the existence of magnetic repulsion or electrical attraction, magnetic attraction. I can't explain that attraction in terms of anything else that's familiar to you. For example, if we say the magnets attract like as if they were connected by rubber bands, I would be cheating you. Because they're not connected by rubber bands, I shouldn't be in trouble. You'd soon ask me about the nature of the bands. And secondly, if you were curious enough, you'd ask me why rubber bands tend to pull back together again, and I would end up explaining that in terms of electrical forces, which are the very things that I'm trying to use the rubber bands to explain. So I have cheated very badly, you see. So I'm not going to be able to give you an answer to why magnets attract each other, except to tell you that they do, and to tell you that that's one of the elements in the world of the different kinds of forces. There are electrical forces, magnetic forces, gravitational forces, and others, and those are some of the parts. If you were a student, you'd go I could go further. I could tell you that the magnetic forces are related to the electrical forces very intimately, that our relationship between the gravity forces and electrical forces remains unknown, and so on. But I really can't do a good job, any job, of explaining magnetic force in terms of something else that you're more familiar with, because I don't understand it in terms of anything else that you're more familiar with.
Я так долго не смогу держать фотоаппарат.
Привет, c'est fini.